Right, Professor Sarah, thank you so much for joining us. Of course, we are here as a continent trying to come together to realize this dream of creating one African market. This is a dream that started way back, from the inception of the Organization of African Union. And today, as we move closer to the 21st of March, when the African leaders will actually put pen to paper to the agreement creating the common, African Continental Free Trade Area, the area of human resource,
science and technology
as well, will play a big role, or actually has its part in this agreement. I want you to just share with us, as a commissioner at the African Union in charge of this area, what sort of items should we be knowing that are contained in this agreement as far as this area is concerned?
Okay. One significant thing that we need to understand first is that the action plan for boosting intra-African trade aims to fast-track the achievement of a continental free trade agreement, which is the reason why we are gathered here in this remarkable city of Kigali, the way you say it here, remarkable Rwanda. Now, why the continental free trade area? We understand, even as Africans, even as diplomats, even as commissioners holding the African Union passport, sometimes when we move from one country to the other, we are asked to produce visas. But now we are saying that Agenda 2063 is about an integrated, prosperous, and peaceful Africa driven by its own competent and skilled citizens, having a role to play in the global arena. How do we have a role to play in the global arena? How do we talk about integration when I, as an African, cannot move from country A to country B without a visa? So it is for this reason that we believe that the African Continental Free Trade Area becomes very necessary, and that agreement needs to be signed. Because if you look at it, I, as the Commissioner for Human Resources, Science and Technology, I have students who move from one country to the other, because one of the flagship of the Pan-African University is of the African Union is the Pan-African University. Why Pan-African University? The Pan-African University first, has to do with education, and education is one of the second most important thing that we look at when we look at it globally, because when we talk about an integrated, prosperous, and peaceful continent driven by its own competent and skilled citizens, having a role to play in the global arena, that cannot be gotten without education. And we are talking about a knowledge-based society to enhance skills development. Now, when we have the Pan-African University Institutes, there are 5 in number. Now, we talk about the mobility, academic mobility from one point within the context of the Continental Free Trade Area. That is where I am involved. And this is that in the global trade in services are increasingly. But again, what about education? Because even when we talk about this trade, we need to look at the educational part. So we are saying that for education in economic development and students on the move, that is where it bears relevance to my department. We have the Pan-African University Institute. There are 5 in number, located in 5 regions of the African continent. And in this African continent, each one has a specific thematic cluster. We have the Pan-African University Institute for water, energy, and climate change, hosted by the University of Clemson in Algeria, representing North Africa. We have the Pan-African University Institute for Life Sciences, Health, and Agriculture, hosted by the University of Ibadan, representing West Africa. Then we have the Pan-African University Institute for basic sciences and technology, hosted by the Jomo Kenyatta University in East Africa. Then we have the Pan-African University for Governance, Humanities, and Social Sciences, hosted by the University of Yaoundé in Cameroon, representing Central Africa. And then the last Pan-African University Institute that we have is the one on space science, to be hosted by South Africa, and this is supposed to commence by 2018. Now, students have a problem, a big problem problem. One of the problems we have is them having visa to move from one country to the other. Because the Pan-African University Institute, the students are given scholarship, full scholarship, and it begins at the master's level and doctoral level. Now, if they have to move from one country to the other, we have visa problems, and we need to fight for visa for them. So it is in this process that we know that if we are able to sign this agreement, it's going to facilitate and take away some of the bottlenecks we have when students have to leave from their different member states to these different universities that are going to get their professionalization.
Right.
And like I said, there are different thematic clusters from the way I've mentioned it. And it is because we know that we need a knowledge-based society.
Then this will be significant.
Yes, so it will be very significant and very important for us.
Right. I want to understand what held us back from having this happen, because and how different do you think the Continental Free Trade Area will actually create that difference of ensuring that this dream is achieved? How sure are we that we'll be able to actually achieve this? Probably if we look ahead, what was stopping us from having this free movement, this difficulty that you're saying? What was holding us back?
What was holding us back is the very reason we're here today in Kigali for this summit, where the head of states have gathered together for them to be able to decide and have it signed. Because if it is not signed and ratified, it cannot be. If it's not signed and endorsed, we cannot operationalize on it. That is the way it functions. And you see, we started since on the 17th with what? With the conferences and with the ministerial. Today is the ministerial. Before the ministerial was when the ambassadors met, and these discussions were also ongoing. It is because we have not yet accepted, and it is how all of us have to accept. It has to be endorsed. That is even this conversation we've had today. It's been there for years, like you rightly said. It's been there for years. But why can't we move ahead? Because of certain bottlenecks that need to be resolved in this meeting and for us to have it signed. It is very essential because, like I was saying, the adoption of the Continental Free Trade Agreement, goods and services, including education, were concurrently negotiated in the first phase of this negotiation. Now, education is a key component of service which can be harnessed for trade opportunity among African countries and contribute to African integration. Because if we have the right kind of research, the right kind of science, the right kind of technology, the right kind of R&D, research and development and innovation, then we can be able to translate. Because when you talk about trade and industry, what trade are we talking about? Whatever we are going to market has to come from somewhere. So it should come from those who can conceive it. When you conceive it, there are people who have to implement, and the people who have to implement are the industries. Now, when the industries implement and give it into a finished product, there are people who need to buy that finished product, and you cannot produce only for yourself. You cannot produce only for your own state. It has to move from. That is why we talk about intra-African free trade movement.
Right, and as you say that we have to sign this, you passionately say this, that it is important for African leaders to actually endorse this agreement and sign it.
Yes.
How do you feel? How do you feel, especially when close to half of the continent of Africa is not going to be here to actually put pen to paper? We have Nigeria, which we have actually seen from a few media houses saying that the president may not be coming here to sign this. What does that make you feel, coming from you passionately saying that we have to sign this because of the benefits that we see will come out of it?
Yes, that has been a bit, it has created a bit of fear and doubt. But we know that as we have come together, we are going to put our heads together and we'll come up with a solution for it. The declaration has to be signed. After the declaration is the agreement itself that needs to be signed. And that is what we're going to do in the next session. Because by the time we went for break, we had not yet discussed this aspect. Countries were still making suggestions, etc. But the chairperson did say that this has been going for too long, and it's high time we put a stop to it by making sure that we do the right things. Right now, for the for the Africa we want, for the Africa that we envisage, there is need for us to put pen to paper, like you said, and it can only be activated and realized when it is signed, so that it is no longer a conference or a summit where we come and talk shows and then there is no action. There need to be action, and the action has to only be when we sign the documents.
Right. Then probably looking at the issue of the mobility of students and teachers, let's just take some time and talk about that a bit. The African Continental Free Trade Area will allow for free movement of labor, from one African country to another. But the challenge has been that different countries have different challenges as far as unemployment rates are concerned. And you'll find that governments are really working hard to fulfill their promises that they make to the electorate that will offer jobs to the youth of this country. Now, where do you see this bringing a challenge as far as the free movement of labor is concerned once it comes into effect? The challenge of governments wanting to offer employment for their locals versus the need to open up borders for others from outside to come and even work in those countries.
By the time we can fulfill the aspirations and goals of Agenda 2063, that issue of us not being able to accommodate others will be gone. It will be like the El Dorado that we are talking about. And when the continent becomes an El Dorado, a paradise that we have been envisaging, then there can be this free movement and people can move from one to the other. Now, let me highlight on this. You see, when we talk about factors affecting academic mobility, one is non-recognition of degrees. You know that with non-recognition of degrees, non-recognition of certificates, non-recognition of diplomas and academic qualifications obtained outside other people's home country or distance mode. So an international conference of states was convened to examine and adopt revisions to the 1981 Arusha Convention on the recognition of studies certificates. So if we have this continental free trade, these are factors that can even still hinder academic mobility, because we need to recognize other degrees that come from other countries outside our own. Like we have different standards, etc.
Right.
That is why we need a qualitative framework for all African member states, and that is already addressed in one of the strategies that was adopted to enhance this under the CESA 2016-2025, which is the Continental Education Strategy for Africa. So we have that. Now, the other thing is that visa and entry restrictions. When we have visa and entry restrictions, this also spoils the free movement of persons and the African passport as a flagship of Agenda 2063. So we need that African passport. When we have that African passport, the mobility of students, mobility of teachers, not only students, because we also need to do best practices. Let's have those who are best in particular fields move from their own country, come to our own country, give us that best practices, and then we'll learn from one another. And this is restricted by this issue of visa. Now, by the time we have all that, we will be able to work on this. So a continental study on free movement of people was actually carried out in Africa, and it has been completed and validated by a technical committee, and this has been discussed with REX, and this exercise identified existing gaps in free movement at policies at the level of the regional economic community. That is what I'm calling REX, and key areas or themes to be highlighted in the drafting of a protocol on free movement of persons. So a continent-wide study on different policies has been put in place. Now, we in the Department of Human Resources, Science and Technology, we are working to ensure that through academic mobility scheme, movement of students and academic staff will contribute in achieving the skills revolution for realizing the African aspiration of Agenda 2063, an integrated, prosperous, peaceful continent driven by its own competent and skilled citizen. And that is why, for me, I'm praying so hard that this African Continental Free Trade movement should be signed before we leave the summit.
Indeed, and just picking on the issue of the acceptance of the academic papers from other universities. countries would say that the reason why we do not do this is because of quality control. You know, you might come from a different country, or you might have gone to do your studies in a different country that did not actually train you as well as we would want you to do that.
That is why we need a qualitative academic framework. And when we have that, we also need to discuss what we call minimal standards. You know, what we call minimal standards is that if I'm going to read mathematics, we as a continent should agree that these are the courses that should be part of what you do as a mathematician. If you can do 40% of this, no matter where you get your degree, you can move from year 1 from Nigeria, go to South Africa and continue year 2. That is what we call student mobility, for them to be able to move, not only because that the degrees need to, and then we need to set the standard.
How practical is this? How practical is it to actually do this? Because some people feel like this is a pipe dream. It seems like a big ambition that we might not be able to do, because we still have every country having its own curriculum setting based on the needs of its own countries as far as the skill gaps are concerned. So how do we harmonize this? It seems
we can harmonize it. We can harmonize it. Yeah. Let me give you a good example. Nigeria, as big as it is, they have what they call the university minimal requirement standards, such that when you leave the University of Ibadan, you can, in any course that you are reading, you can go to University of Lagos and continue in the second year. You carry your results from there and proceed to the next university, and you continue. So if it can be done at a national level, then we can use the national level skeleton and move it to a regional level. So you see, we need these academic frameworks. They are very important. So it's for us to come together. We have specialized technical committees on education, on health, on communication, etc. The one on education is under my department, Education, Science and Technology. So we could come together to harmonize. When we say harmonization, we are not saying that things don't have their peculiarity. No. But we are saying that there should be a minimal standard, a minimal requirement standard. That if you are reading English, these are the core courses that you must do as an English student. If we agree from the regional level and we come to the continental level, that when you say you are reading English, 40% of your courses should be this way, and each school that has English programs take that 40%, and then the other 60% they now add what they want to make their own course unique. Then our students can move from country A to country B, or from institution A to institution C in different countries, and they will be very, very okay about it.
Right.
Yes.
Maybe before I let you go, there's this issue of the level playing field for citizens from different countries as far as education levels are concerned. Every country has its unique challenges as far as education is concerned. So how do we deal with that level, creating that level playing field, where a country doesn't say that for us, we were left behind because of the challenges we had, because of our historical past. We just switched our system from French to English because now our teachers are still learning English, so we can't really compete with the English learning countries. What sort of protection or level playing field does this agreement provide for such institutions?
You mean the Continental Free Trade Agreement?
Yes.
I instead will talk about the strategies put in place by the African Union Commission to deal with that. When it comes to education, 3 strategies were adopted. Don't forget, you remember that Agenda 2063 is a 50-year plan divided into 5 phases of 10-year plans. And we believe that the education sector is integral in us achieving the vision and aspirations of Agenda 2063 for the Africa that we want. Now, if that be the case, we had Continental Education Strategy for Africa 2016-2025, which we call CESA 2016-2025. We have the Science, Technology, Innovation Strategy for Africa 2024, and then we have the Continental Technical Vocational Education Training, which is the Continental TVET Strategy. Now, in having this, it is a general template. We have a general template. We have the aspirations. We have the goals, and this has been given to all member states, but they need to adopt it based on the functionality of their countries, like you are saying. saying that if we have different histories, but having that template speaks to us on what an education strategy should be for primary education, for secondary education, for tertiary education. That is already handled under these educational strategies that have been put in place.
Right.
Now, the Continental Free Trade Movement enhances it because, like I tell you, when you talk about trade and industry, there can be no trade and industry without education. Because who are those who are going to do the trade? They are the professionals that you have trained, and they have to sell byproducts. What products? The innovation. When we talk about innovation, science technology can only come because there are innovations. And how do you practicalize, implement those innovations? It is by making sure that the industries are involved or the private sectors are involved. Because when you have conceived, what you have conceived on paper should translate into practicable doables, and it is only industries that can do it. So that is why in all our meetings we always insist the business sector, the policy makers, and even the students and those who imagine the things should come together in one room, so that when you are moving, then you know that you can be able to implement it. Because if not, we become cemeteries of ideas and cemeteries of conferences and cemeteries of strategies without doing anything, because we don't actualize. Right now, the conversation should move beyond the talking conversation. It should move to the doables, and that is why we normally partners. We have partners that work with us, and those partners are to help us achieve this, because those partners are the ones who work directly with member states. So we should take away. You see, the future depends. The future depends on those who prepare for it today. If we don't prepare for it today, there will be no future. There will be no Agenda 2063 if we don't put the right infrastructures and the right things that we need to do in order to make sure that the Africa that we want, the integrated, prosperous and peaceful Africa that we want, can be achieved by 2063. And all this has to do with quality education, quality infrastructure, and having the means. Because most of the problem we've been talking about is that we don't have the finances. It is high time we as Africans take hold of what we call ownership. Let's own our programs. Even when you depend on partners, own your programs. Use the little that you have, and then ask partners to help you. Partners should not dictate to you what you should do. You know where the shoe pinches, tell the partners, this is what I want. For example, Rwanda is a very good example, and that is why we like where we are today in having this continental free trade. After what happened, the history that we know of Rwanda, but see where it is. Reconciliation has taken place. Things have moved. People are working. People are happy. That is the kind of dream. When you come to a position of power, what did you meet? What have you left? That is why each time I speak, I say history is being written, and we are part and parcel of that history. And posterity will not spare us, because in all our mandate, we must deliver. And it is very essential that we deliver.
Maybe finally now, what message would you be telling the leaders as they put pen to paper? What message would you be telling them as far as implementation is concerned? You rightly put it that yes, indeed, we have a lot of talk that has taken place, but less action. So what specific message will you be telling the leaders as far as walking the talk is concerned?
Walking the talk. Let's first agree. Let declaration be signed. Let the agreement be signed, and then let it become practicable. Because there's no way we can move if this is not endorsed and ratified. So let us be conscious of our mandate. Let us be conscious of the Pan-African spirit that is moving us. Let's remember the dreams of the founding fathers and work towards that dream. It is an integrated Africa, meaning that we must be united. In our differences, we can still be united. It is very essential for us. And this future belongs to us. And the future of Africa is being written by those of us who have mandates. And then we must deliver to that mandate. It is not a call to sit in good offices and feel comfortable. No. It is beyond that. It is a call to think, and think, so that you will be able to impact your people. Remember what Nkrumah said. He said, I am not an African because I was born in Africa. I am an African because Africa is born in me. If Africa is born in me, then the true values of collective responsibility should be part and parcel of us. That is what we call the Pan-African spirit.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Professor Sarah, for your time. Commissioner,
Thank you.
Human Resources, Science and Technology at the African Union.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your points. Very articulate indeed.
Thank you for receiving me.
All right, thank you for watching. Of course, these are just some of the special interviews that we'll be bringing to you in the course of our exclusive coverage, wall-to-wall coverage of the happenings right here in Rwanda ahead of the extraordinary summit of the African Union Heads of State happening right here in Rwanda, ahead of the 21st of March, where the Continental African Free Trade Area will be put into practice as far as the signing and ratification is concerned. Stay with us right here on Rwanda Television. My name, as always, is Eugene Anangwe.